Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the I Work in Sports live interview. This is the show where we talk to accomplished sport business professionals who come here to share their knowledge, experience, tips, and advice in order to help you succeed in your career. If we're just meeting, my name is João Frigerio. I'm the founder of I Work in Sports, and I want to thank you for being here with us today. Let me know if this is your first time or if you're coming back. And as you know, write on the comments also where you're watching from. We're doing this at a different time in the day, so let's see if we can still get some of you to participate in the live edition. Otherwise, you can always catch up the replay later. But then if you do, also write in the comments where you're watching from. Now, if you don't know I Work in Sport, we're a platform to help you accelerate your career in sport. If you want to work in sport, or if you're already, if you want to work in sport, or if you already work in sports, we're here to help you either way. So we organize events which connect you with recruiters in case you're looking for a job, or with the sports management programs. Academic programs if you're interested in investing in education. So these programs can be very effective to help you enter in the industry. Now, if you, as I said, if you already know us, I can ask you to go and hit that like button. If this is your first time here, you can wait a little, see if you like what you see, and then you hit that like. It helps us, helps the channel. And well, let me introduce my guest. I have Jamie Corr here. He's got a quite interesting career. With several years in sports, with a lot of knowledge to share. He's worked in organizations such as the IOC, Red Bull, agencies like IMG and GMR, and not so long ago had a spell at Hill+Knowlton strategies. And since July, he's the Senior Vice President of Sponsorship and Consultancy for the EMEA region at MKTG Sports and Entertainment. So sponsorship is something that is changing fast in our industry. So this is a great opportunity for us to understand the new trends and where that's going in the near future. So I can't wait to talk about all that, about his career, about trends in sponsorship. So I will invite Jamie to join me. He's actually next to me, but right after that intro that you know so well by now. All right. Here he is, Jamie.
Hello. How are you? It's good to see you.
Being here at the show, coming to my house, it's great. And so let's start. Normally, the way I start this is I did a short presentation about you.
Sure.
But if you could tell us a bit about your career, how actually started working in sports.
Of course.
I can tell people, you'll notice that he's Scottish, but he makes an effort for us to understand.
Yeah, hopefully we won't need a translator. So look, let me start actually before I actually worked in sport, because my degree was history at university. And then I went into banking after uni and decided that I really didn't enjoy it, and was actually very lucky where I met a former tutor from the university who told me that he was setting up a sports marketing course at the University of Stirling. So that was my sort of grounding. I did a master's in sports marketing. And then my first role was actually working for a charity called Football Aid, which was set up by a Scottish entrepreneur who was a big Celtic fan.
Where was it? Was it Glasgow?
That was in Edinburgh. Yeah. So to be honest, great.
Is that where you're from?
I'm from just outside Edinburgh, a place called Linlithgow. But I always say I'm from Edinburgh because it's a small town.
Lovely place.
Yeah. I was back last week actually. I went back to see Scotland play Australia in the rugby.
Cool.
Yeah.
How did that go?
We lost by a point. Unfortunately, typical Scotland.
I've been there to watch. Sorry, Well, we'll get back to that, but
Yeah.
I've been there to watch also Scotland.
Yeah.
Playing rugby, and
Yeah.
I think we lost both of them.
I would imagine we
I
did,
was with,
yeah.
I joined the Tartan Army.
Oh, did
by
you?
my friend Martin Ross. Do you know?
Right, I don't actually know. I know the name, but yeah.
He's at sport business at the moment.
Right.
But anyway,
Yeah.
going back to
Okay. Yeah, so, worked for Football Aid, and that was my grounding. And then was very lucky to join an agency in Edinburgh called Trimedia, which was a communications agency. And I was working on various clients, and not just sport, but it was my first opportunity to work on a sports account, which was with John Lewis, it's a big department store in the UK. So some of the listeners might be familiar. And they were actually a sponsor of the Scottish rugby team at the time. So that was my first grounding, working with a client in sport. And from that point, really fueled my passion to work in the sports industry.
When was that?
That was 2003. I joined Football Aid, and then Trimedia was 2005, 2006. Okay. Yeah. So from that point, I was very, very lucky to then join IMG down in London, which, as everyone is aware, IMG is sort of the founder of sports marketing, Mark McCormack, back in the 1960s. So I've been very lucky in my career, but that's my background.
And then, tell me just a bit more, because you just
Sure.
started at IMG, and then how did you progress from there?
Yeah, so I did 2 years at IMG, and then I actually went back to Scotland to work on the.
And what were you doing at IMG?
Oh, sorry. So I was actually working on the British Airways sponsorship of the London 2012 games, which was my first experience of the Olympics.
Right.
So British Airways was a domestic sponsor of the OCOG. I was working on working with colleagues to develop the sponsorship strategy, which was very, very interesting at the time. So that was 2 or 3 years before the actual games. So
Cool. Right, and then from IMG?
From IMG, I worked for an agency called M&C Saatchi, which is a fantastic agency based in London. It's actually global, but
was that doing sport as well?
I was doing sport, yeah. So I was looking after the Royal Bank of Scotland sponsorship of the Scottish rugby team. So it was a London agency, but I was based in Edinburgh, and that was the activation of the sponsorship. So that included working with my colleagues in London on the strategic planning, but also then activating. It was very interesting. It was a sponsorship of the national team, but Royal Bank of Scotland also wanted to make sure that they were engaging with Scottish communities. So they were using their banking network around the country to do a lot of community work with rugby clubs across Scotland. So, really interesting approach from sort of top down, because when I say top, it was the sort of front of shirt, using the elite players of the Scotland team, but filtering that down across the bank's network across Scotland.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. And then
I had the amazing opportunity of joining the IOC in Lausanne.
That was when?
That was back in 2013. So I joined in August 2013, a few months before Sochi. Amazing opportunity to come over here. Great opportunity.
Was that at TMS?
That was at TMS, yeah.
Right.
So worked with some fantastic people there that have become good friends.
TMS, for who's not familiar, TV marketing,
television and marketing services. So the sort of division or department of the IOC who generates the revenue and looks after generates the revenue through sponsorships of the top partnerships and also the broadcast income. And my role there was to work with my colleagues to service the top partners. So I looked after General Electric, GE, which is no longer a top sponsor.
Yeah.
I looked after Samsung. I looked after Atos. And then I was very lucky. I was involved in the conversations with when the IOC were speaking to Bridgestone about becoming a top sponsor. So I was involved in that, and then I serviced the account when they became a top sponsor back in 2015.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you go to the Olympics in Brazil?
I did. I was not with the IOC because I joined GMR Marketing in the June of right before.
Oh, just
But I
before.
spent a lot of time in Rio. Had an amazing time when I was there. Met a lot of Brazilian friends. I was also at the World Cup. I went for a few days to watch France, Germany, and
How was it again too?
were you?
Yeah.
As a Scotsman, it was the most uncomfortable experience because of the heat. And I just remember watching the sun come round the Maracana and thinking this is not going to be good in the second half. So it was really hard.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, not a great game of football.
Yeah.
But
Was it 1-0?
it was 1-0 to Germany, but I expected that to be one of the sort of.
Now I wish the semi-finals was 1-0 to Germany.
Exactly.
Anyway.
I know.
So
that's a national heartache.
So you had just joined GMR there.
Yes. Yeah. So I was basically joined GMR in June. So probably had a month of traveling across to San Francisco, meeting my new colleagues, and then going to Rio for the month of end of July and August. So an amazing time there.
And did you stay at GMR until when?
Stayed at GMR until the end of 2019.
So another 3 years, more or less. Yeah.
Another 3.5 years at GMR. I had a fantastic time there. I was responsible to consulting and helping GMR grow their business globally. So spent a lot of time in Japan.
Were you always involved in the consulting part as well, at the IOC as well, or that came when you went to GMR?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's an element of consulting when you're working with the top partners because, your job is to develop the relationship with them, make sure that the rights that they have are being honored. But also there's consultation in that you're looking at working with the top partners, working with other departments within the IOC to see how they can then activate their sponsorships. And that involves, if you look at the ecosystem, there's us as account managers at the IOC, you have the top partner and the people you work with there, but you might also then have an agency like a GMR or an IMG or an MKTG. So again, it's all about understanding, there's different people, different relationships. How do we all work together to be collaborative?
Right.
Yeah.
But then between GMR and MKTG, you went to Hill+Knowlton. It has a different profile or kind of agency, right?
Completely.
So
yeah. And this.
How was that? Maybe explain a little.
Yeah. So I mean, I took the decision to. This was GMR was sponsorship, marketing, and consulting, and I wanted a new challenge, and I'd worked in communications right at the start of my career. So Hill+Knowlton is a very well-established global communications agency, and they have a fantastic sports team, which was actually nurtured and developed by somebody called Andy Sutherden, who's very well known in the sports industry in London and globally. And he'd really built up a fantastic team there. And Andy actually left. I think it was at the end of 2017. End of 2018, and he'd gone on to another role, and they were looking for someone to come in and lead the sports team. Right. So, luckily I went through the interview process and took the opportunity to. It was very different. It was going from traveling a lot, working in a smaller team at GMR, to going in and managing a team of 25 people. And that was in January 2020. And then COVID hit, and wow, what an experience, because sport stopped, so yeah.
But you remained, I mean, with them for a while, and then you left, and now recently you joined MKTG.
MKTG, I've been, was chatting to them for a while. It was to go back into sports marketing and partnerships consulting.
Right.
MKTG is part of the Dentsu network, which, as some of the listeners might not be aware, is a big huge Japanese agency. Obviously, huge standing in sport. So I joined there in July. I there's 3 verticals within MKTG Sport and Entertainment. I look after the partnerships and consulting division. We also have a communications and content division, and then we have a data and insights division.
Right.
But in my team, we have 20 people who are, I can't say this, fantastic, very, very young team I have, but very, very talented.
Cool.
We work with clients like Cadbury and all of their football work with clubs across the UK and the Premier League, and also in Scotland. We also work with FedEx and the work they do with the Champions League. So my responsibility is to work with the team on a daily basis and, make sure that the culture is good, make sure that people are happy. My role is to sort of develop and nurture people. Also, there's the working with the clients and making sure that they are being serviced, but also looking at how we can maybe develop the clients that we're working with.
Yeah.
And also there's a major part of what I do is looking at how we bring new business to MKTG, which is very exciting. So there's a lot of existing conversations at the moment.
I will ask you actually to give even a bit of more details on those 2 aspects that you just described of the role. But I actually want to let you know that, as I told you, this is live. And so there's some people actually watching us around the world and leaving some messages. So just so for you to know, we have Tekle, Simonia, I hope that I got that right, in Valencia, studying Masters of Sports Management at ESVS. Jesus Lorenzo Gomez, he's always here with us. Good to see you again, Jesus, in Rennes, France. Marcelo C, in Brazil, saying hi. Olá, obrigado, Marcelo. Philip already has a question for you here. So, what does top firms look out for to sponsor global sports events or a digital broadcasting product? Philip, we'll come back to that. Okay, I just want to cover a few more aspects of Jamie's career, but we'll have a whole conversation about sponsorship prepared. Yours will be the first question about that. I'll come back to that. Who else? Otello James in Dakar, Senegal. Hello. By the way, as you can see, this is a new setup. We tried this at the IOC a couple of weeks ago, and but let us know if this is working. If you can, hear us well. It's a little different than talking to the computer. I think it's much nicer.
It's nice. I like it. But it's very intimate.
For you who are watching, let us know if you can hear us well as well, or if you need to get closer to the microphone or something. All right. So yeah, Otello is in Dakar. Pav, my first live by a work in sport attended. Really insightful so far. Andrew watching from Thailand. Hello, Andrew, and thanks for all the help. Hustler in Ethiopia. Hustler Nation. Opav is actually in Birmingham, UK. And we have as well Hiroki Watanabe watching in Japan. So you could see that I think we covered a few.
I think we have a global audience.
Many continents.
Yeah.
It's quite early for America at the moment, but
I'm impressed.
And there's some people, and you can see there's some people watching on YouTube and some on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So it's from all over. Prepare your questions. We're gonna get to that as well. So actually, as I told you, I wanted to get a little bit more on MKTG, right? Because you're saying it's a part of the Denso Group, and is it a young agency? Is it new?
No, it's been around for a while. So I think it's been in existence probably about 10 to 15 years. It's global. We have a big presence in North America. We have a big presence also in Australia, and obviously Japan because of Dentsu. So
I think I mentioned that to you the other day that I actually initially thought they were from Australia.
Yeah, you did. Yeah,
first people that actually contacted me from MKTG.
That's right. Yeah,
were from there, and then ended up having more contact with people from there.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
they have a big presence. And I also see many job posts
Yes.
in Australia. So I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
so they hire a lot there. But and then talking about then your actually work at the company.
Yeah.
You're saying that you have two aspects of them. One is of the relationship with the sponsor that you already have.
Yeah.
For instance, I think it's important to know you don't really participate on the commercial. You don't sell sponsorships or
Do you know
participate on that as well.
There is a small piece of that, and it's an area that we are developing because of the close proximity that we work with Dentsu. So we work very closely with Dentsu Sports Europe. It's actually a friend of mine who's Japanese, who's based in London.
Is that Tom?
Tom Nakano, yeah. So
Mario Medeiros put me in touch with him.
Right, yeah, okay, right. Well, we should discuss that more.
Yeah.
But I was actually messaging with Tom earlier. But yeah, so
send him the link.
Yes,
hey, Tom,
hopefully
we want you here.
Yeah, hopefully Tom's actually watching this. I'll be very upset if he's not. So yeah, there is an element that we want to develop around the sort of commercial rights side as well. But it's obviously Dentsu work with rights holders, some of them here in Lausanne. So, but yeah, it's very my role. Why I love my role is I get the opportunity to do so many different things, which is very exciting for me, especially as I'm getting a bit older now.
But then you're saying the aspects of managing some of your team, and then dealing with the sponsors. You come to them with what? With ideas, with a plan, how to activate their rights. Is a lot of that done actually before them signing contracts, or a lot can be done after?
Yeah, we are part of that process. So if you have a brand who wants to partner with a sport or a rights holder, what we can do as an agency is work with our data and insights team to look at the property. You then work with the business to look at the objectives of why you might want to become a sponsor. So it's all driven by data and insights. You then look at the value of what that property might be. And obviously as part of the negotiation, you're working with the rights holder to say, well, look, this brand needs these particular assets. And those could be traditional assets like tickets and opportunities to host hospitality events. But also, as we evolve in the world, we're looking at digital assets and how is the brand and the rights holder working together to engage with the brand's audiences on digital and social platforms.
Right.
The other very interesting area that we are talking a lot to prospective clients and existing clients is the metaverse, the use of NFTs, which is fascinating. A very, very interesting topic.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, okay.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But you're saying, so would you say that the part that you like the most about your job is what?
The people. I mean, look, I'll talk about, internally, you're working with the team. I mean, everyone's different. I'm working with people that are 23, 24 years old who teach me things. That's the one thing that I think is imperative in business. You learn from younger people.
100%, yeah.
Because they operate in a different way to me. I'm 46 years old. I consume media in a different way to my 22-year-old colleague. The people that I work with as clients, you have people based in Europe who work differently to people in London, so like I said earlier, I was very privileged to work at the IOC, and that's when I had the opportunity to work with Brazilians or with Japanese or with Koreans. And I think it's understanding that not everyone's the same. So yeah, I mean, I know that's very broad when I say people, but
do you travel much as well?
I probably don't travel as much as I did with the IOC or with GMR, but funnily enough, I'm just back from Paris this morning because I had meetings in Paris yesterday. So it's predominantly Europe that I travel, but my personal situation is I travel between Switzerland and London at the moment. So
yeah. Definitely. There is who else? Vitor Bastos is saying hi from Manchester as well. Hello, Vitor. Thank you for being here with us. And Is there a big difference in working in sports? So you've been in many agencies.
Yeah.
Large majority of your career sort of dealing with sport.
Yeah.
But at the beginning wasn't, let's say, directly involved in sports. Is that a big difference between working in sport and outside that industry?
Do you know, very good question, because, you know, my career started in banking.
Yeah.
You know, and I spent a bit of time in Edinburgh, then I moved down to London. I would say that it was very pressurized. You know, banking can be quite a cutthroat industry. There's a lot of transferable skills that I learned from banking, especially around the finance element of my job. You know, I need to make sure that my team is generating revenue and the clients are generating revenue. And then, you know, you're then looking at the costs and the margins. You know, that is just why, you know, you run a business.
Right.
So I learned a lot from that. I do think, you know, the sports industry is a fascinating place to work in. You know, back to my point, you meet so many people. I think what's interesting now, just going back to what I was talking about earlier, you know, there's a lot of people coming into the sports industry now from different backgrounds. You know,
Right.
so there's a lot of people coming in with data and analytical backgrounds, because it's hugely important for campaigns, marketing campaigns, to really be influenced by people who really understand data and insights. A lot of rights holders are now hiring very young people who understand data and insights.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, I mean, we could.
And what about, because you're MKTG, sports and entertainment.
Yeah.
And now there's more and more this mix. Those two industries are pretty much part of one.
Yeah.
Nowadays. So how much do you do sort of on the more entertainment side?
Very good question. Look, that is part of my role. You know, I joined in July, and it is to sort of grow the entertainment side as well. You know, where we focus predominantly on sport, but what you've said is very relevant. You know, there is, I mean, I would argue that sport has been entertainment for a long time. Yes, it's becoming, or there's more of a convergence as we evolve. But, you know, if you look at the development of OTT platforms, of rights holders looking at creating their own OTT platforms, they need additional content. How do you create that content that is entertaining for new and younger audiences? You know, they need to be growing the engagement with their audiences from a sort of direct to fan approach. And that's where I see this entertainment piece, this storytelling, you know, what is content, and what is the evolution of content, and how people interact with that content. So
right. And so when we're talking about, you know, you're going from banking to working in sports, you mentioned some transferable skills. So if you were to think about, analyze yourself, what are the skills that you have that actually allows you to say thrive in the industry?
I'd like to say that the character that I am as a leader is very patient, very approachable. Hopefully my colleagues will agree with that. You know, I think it's very important to have emotional intelligence. And you know, I think I learned a lot managing a team during COVID, because I'll be very honest, psychologically for everyone, that was challenging. I mean, I had to do things that I never thought I would have to do because of the impact that COVID had on financial implications to a business. You know, I unfortunately had to make people redundant, and I would never want to go through that again. You know, unfortunately, that was the scenario we were in. But what I wanted to do after that scenario was the people I made redundant, I wanted to then help them, and we've become friends. And those individuals are now they were younger, they're now very successful. And they've actually gone on to very good things in the sports industry, which I'm very proud of them that we were able to do that. But, you know, I know your question was about me as a person and what have I learned. And
your skills, I mean, you said your leadership skills would probably are some that
I mean, look, it's interesting because I think the older I get, the more you learn. when I was, like I said earlier, I'm 46 now, I'm 47 next year. When I was 30, I was probably a very different person to who I am now.
For sure.
Even I think I learned a lot during my time at Hill+Knowlton, which was 2 years ago, because of the experience that everyone in this world had to experience for 2 years.
Would you say that was the biggest challenge that you had professionally?
Oh, undoubtedly, yeah, because of what, that example I've just given, but also, I mean, every day managing a team of 25 people, and I mean, there was so much anxiety about what's going on in the world. The sports industry stopped, so the worry of, will our clients want to do any work? That has a knock-on effect on people saying, well, if we're not doing any work, are we going to have jobs? And you're having to speak to people and counsel them and coach them, and yeah, it was tough, really hard.
Right. And well, there's a question here from Esther McKenzie.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get back to that in 1 second, Esther, because it has a lot to do with what I was going to ask you, which is, I'm used to having a camera here and kind of looking at this and the camera's there. So if you're usually involved in recruiting for your team, and then if so, what are then the skills that you normally look for?
Yeah, I mean, again, very good question. I think it really depends on the particular role.
Yeah, of course.
It depends on the level, the seniority of the role. But let's say I'm looking at lower levels, so maybe account executives, senior account execs, account managers. I'm looking for people that are curious, that want to learn. I think in marketing and communications, you're never going to be an expert because things move so quickly.
Yeah.
You need to be constantly reading, talking to people, being curious. And when I say marketing and comms, this is a job I do in sport. I mean, it's a fascinating industry. I mean, yourself, things change rapidly. We talk about metaverse, we talk about the potential of European super leagues. It's moving at rapid speed, and you need to be learning about this and being curious about it. So that's what I look for. I look for people that are passionate as well. I always want people that want to learn and share and collaborate and be part of a culture that's very part of a culture that's very focused on the team and how we'll work together to achieve something that's big, which is success.
Cool. Leads me to Esther's question. Hello, she's in the UK. So does MKTG hire internationally? Also, are you involved? Yes, with sports events.
Yes, we are. Yes. So I mean,
And do you hire internationally?
We would. Yeah. I mean, obviously, we are an international business. So we hire. We've actually in my team, I have someone from Italy. I have someone from Brazil. I said to you.
And they're based.
They're based in London.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes, we do. So yeah.
Still, even with this Brexit thing, is still.
Yes, there are certain challenges. It depends what country you're from. I remember going through this when I joined GMR because I was going to move to the US. This was 2016, and that is not easy for someone from the UK to move to the USA. So you have to look at all those challenges and intricacies.
Right. Yeah. Let me read a question here from Vitor Bastos. Good afternoon, Jamie and João. My question goes to Jamie. How do you employ analytics tools or analytical tools to track real-time performance of sponsorship deals?
Very, very good question. And, real-time, well, I guess what is that definition of real-time performance? We have proprietary tools that we use within Dentsu and MKTG, but we also work with other organizations like, for example, GWI. Going back to my point about what is that definition of real time, I mean, there are some businesses now that could analyze the impact of social and digital straight away. We would need to be working with an outside organization to do that type of work. Normally, if we're asked to evaluate a sponsorship, that's going to take, a few weeks to a month, because we're gathering all of the information, whether that's broadcast information that we're getting from an outside source, we're getting information from the rights holder, etc. But I don't know if that answers the question about, real time, because that could be defined in different ways. So.
Yeah. Do you know a company called Horizon?
I do, yes.
Yes. We had him in the show as well.
Okay.
That's super interesting.
It's a very interesting business, yes. And I've been following that very closely, actually. Yeah. They're working with a lot of rights holders and athletes.
Indeed. We also have Attila Mascarenhas saying hello from Belo Horizonte. Hello, Attila. Now, I'm sure that you get people asking you for advice all the time. There's more water here if you need.
Not for the moment, but maybe.
So do you have one piece of advice whenever people say, come to you, Jamie, I'm graduating from school, or really love, basically people want to normally work in sports because they love sport. Right. I love to watch football. Therefore, I'd like to work with football. That's, I think, where it starts. And then they come and ask you for, advice. What do you say?
I think there's two parts to that. What I would say, and one of the things that I maybe regret when I was doing my master's, is not planning when I was doing that master's to be reaching out to maybe rights holders like the Scottish Football Association or Hearts Football Club, which I'm a fan of, to say, I want to come and do some work experience. I want to learn, and I want to learn on the job. During my master's.
During your master's.
Because one of the hardest things that I experienced was doing my master's and then probably expecting that I was immediately going to get a job in sport. And it's hard because a lot of people want to work in sport. So
and a lot of times for free.
Exactly. Now, look, when I first graduated, and it's changed now, which is good, but a lot of organizations expected people to be working as interns for nothing. Now the world's changed, which is good. You now have paid internships, because, for example, if you're in London or New York or some of the big cities, to be unpaid and trying to live as a graduate in London is very, very difficult. So, there's been a transformation there. The other thing I would say, advice to give is, going back to my point about learning, let's take one element of sport. Sport is business, right? They're commercial entities, or football clubs, or so it's you might be studying business studies, and if you're interested, you need to take the studies you do as a business studies graduate, and if you want to work in sport, think about what is transferable from that degree and align it with why you want to work for a football club or the IOC. You might be doing a degree in social and digital media. Now, to be honest, you have brands that are sponsors that need to be activating their sponsorships, and social and digital is imperative. Right. You might have someone studying cultural studies. Now, there's another element of what sport sponsorships or sports policy. You might actually be working at the IOC or Sport England, looking at sports policy and how sport can actually change society. So, you might have a non-relevant degree to sport, but think about how those skills are transferable into then going into your desire to work in the sports industry. So
for sure. Let's get to the sponsorship related questions. So people here want to know who was that. Actually, since the question here was Philip. Before we get to that one, maybe paint us a picture of how sponsorship is changing
Yeah.
You know, we have that's a traditional model
Yeah.
of basically, you know, clubs would sell almost like airtime or how would you call that? Just attention. It's
awareness.
Awareness. A perimeter board.
Yeah.
It's
front of shirt.
Yeah. And that was it. And now, obviously, that evolved a lot.
Yeah.
So paint us a picture of where we are at the moment.
Yeah, and look,
and the difference.
It's a continuous evolution, I think. Excuse me. What I find particularly interesting now is the real strategic focus of sponsors. You know, they are investing a lot of money in a rights deal with the IOC or the UEFA or FIFA, and strategically they'll be looking at, you know, how can this 4-year or 8-year partnership potentially transform my business, you know. And it goes back to that point about, you know, why are we actually doing this? Is it driving awareness? Is it to align potentially with the purpose of the business? And it could be things like enabling the business to become more focused on diversity and inclusion. So there's all these elements to it. And what I get quite excited about is there's some really smart people that work within brands, and there's some very smart people that work at rights holders, and they're collaborating to say, well, look, if we end up becoming an Olympic sponsor, how is this potentially going to transform what? And let's take an example of Deloitte becoming a top sponsor of the IOC. What's very interesting is, and I don't work with Deloitte, and I'm assuming a little bit, but I would imagine they're working together to say, where can we take the IOC by 2030, 2032 as the collaborative, but also where can the IOC take Deloitte? So it's a true mutually collaborative approach. And I think that's what I'm quite interested and passionate about, is that very strategic, long-term approach. And look, there's everything else that goes around that. Let's not forget that, you know, hospitality is still a really important part of a sports sponsorship. You know, you need to be entertaining and building relationships with some of your key clients, you know. So, you know, yes, hospitality can still be seen as quite old-fashioned, but it's still important as part of the whole package of how you activate a sponsorship. So, yeah.
And I imagine that you have clients that come to you with very, very, very different objectives.
Completely. Yeah. And
then your work would be to tailor a strategy for them. Okay,
exactly.
If you want to sponsor, this is what you ask.
Yeah. And I'm glad you asked that, because, you know, maybe your question was about, you know, the traditional to the contemporary approach. And, you know, if you go back 20, 30 years ago in sponsorship, it was, you know, to your point, your rights were to have perimeter signage. You know, if it was FIFA World Cup, you had tickets for the event. You had the opportunity to run hospitality, and that was really it. But now, you know, you'll have brands negotiating with rights holders to say, well, how do we tailor this to what we need? You know, we do that as MKTG when we're working with football clubs on a brand to say, well, this is what we want to do as a brand. We need these particular assets. And now that does not then need to be the same contractual deal that is done with one football club and the other football club. They're going to be very different.
For sure. Let me go back, I promise. Let's see, Philip, there was a question from him here. Let's see, didn't read it yet. So, Jamie, what does top firms look out for to sponsor a global sports event or a digital broadcasting product?
Yeah,
so we just mentioned that it varies a lot, but give us
it does,
ideas.
And, you know, I think it's a really good question, because I think it sort of goes back to what I was saying about, you know, let's say it's a top partner. You know, they're spending it's a significant investment, you know, over an 8-year period, sort of minimum, and potentially longer. So, you know, you need to be looking at, you know, let's say you have a sponsor around the Olympics. They'll be looking at their business to 2030 to 2032 and saying, where can the Olympic or the platform of the Olympic movement allow us to drive our business forward? Now, that could be the soft, intangible opportunity around the values of the Olympic movement, but also the more tangible opportunities of we will potentially sell more product, if it's Coca-Cola. Now, what I think is really...
But then the trick is also measuring it.
Exactly. Oh, completely. Yeah. No, and look, it was interesting because, there's been a couple of people asking questions about data and insights. You're right. From the start, you need to be saying, what are the objectives? Why are we doing this? But you're right. It then needs to be measured in a very robust way. Otherwise, you will not see what the return is on the investment. But what's also interesting, and we talk about ESG and that move from, and this is getting a bit wider than sport, shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism, right? And the reason I'm bringing this up is, businesses now need to be valued on their social impact. How are they showing that there's equality within their business? Those type of things can be driven by sponsorships.
How important is that nowadays when you go to talk to your clients and to work on their strategy?
It's a big request to us as consultants, and they do say, well, how can this property allow us to align with our, it could be around, let's say it's around environment. How can a property allow us to drive our environmental goals? That could be around, and that could be very wide because you start breaking it down.
Normally that comes as a request from the brand, or sometimes you also bring that to the table to them if you think that they're not paying much attention to that.
As good consultants, you need to be saying, look, and this goes back to being very aware of what is happening in the world outside of sport, because what is happening around environmental sustainability, what is happening around social impact, what are brands doing in the social impact space. So you need to be very aware of that. And yes, I wouldn't be a good consultant if I wasn't making my clients aware of what is happening in the world of purpose and how our business is really looking at this and doing it in a very authentic and credible way. Thank you. I was needing some water.
There you go.
Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Let me see if there's... And by the way, thank you. Was that again? Sorry, it was Philip. Thank you for the question. So you're talking about all that sort of evolution.
Yeah.
And what are the, say, sports organizations that are adapting better to sort of this transition of how to sell or even sort of approach sponsorship to brands?
Look, the one that you would always sort of look at is the NBA.
NBA.
Yeah, they have been at the forefront of. It goes back to the point you were making earlier about sport and entertainment. If you think about the NBA, it almost always has been sport and entertainment. You then look at the ability of some of the NBA players to really make a difference in culture and society, which I find very, very interesting. And, there's been some very smart people leading the NBA over the years to really remain at the forefront of what is happening in the world. I think
seems like Formula One is doing something interesting as well.
You're right. If you look, everyone talks about it. It is a little bit of a sort of zeitgeist at the moment. But if you look at Drive to Survive and how they've created that content, and I'll be honest, I'm not a huge Formula One fan, but I have watched Drive to Survive, and it has sparked an interest because of the storytelling and the narrative. So I probably, it's not driven me to sit and watch F1 races, but I now know more about it.
Yeah.
That's not to say that I might never watch them, but it's a catalyst for more engagement. my last point on your question, I would definitely say there's a lot of very, very intelligent people at the International Olympic Committee and moving things forward as well.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that
Yeah.
because they do have the top program, right?
Yes,
It
yeah.
was established in the 80s
Mm.
with a certain format.
Yeah.
How is that being adapted?
It's evolving, it's adapting. They're very focused now on purpose around sponsorship. There's very smart people and intelligent people within TMS that are looking at speaking to the tops about purpose, but purpose is very broad. Is that working with athletes and some of the tops to look at social impact? Is it working with some of the tops to look at the environmental impacts of the games? So, that is happening, and it's an evolution. So yeah.
Very good. I think there's let me see, it's a comment or a question from a hierarchy here. Let me see. Hi, nice to see you. I work at sports agency in Japan, competitor of Denso.
Okay.
Really? Well, you can put the name here if you want. That's not a problem. In studying at FBA to expand my career in sport industry. I would like to ask you, what skills will be required if I hope to work at a sports agency globally, as both hard skills and soft skills aspects? I think you touched on it a little, but maybe.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's being aware.
He said Hakahodo.
Hakahodo.
We imagined.
Yeah, do you know, interestingly, I worked with Hakahodo when I was at GMR.
All right.
And we were very successful in winning a piece of business around the Olympics. So I've spent a bit of time in the Hakahodo office in Tokyo.
Arigato, Hiroki, for the question, but
yeah,
skills.
Yeah, look, it's it's a really good question, but you've sort of said that juxtaposition of soft and hard skills. Now, the hard skills are the continuous learning. You need to be reading books, you need to be listening to podcasts, you need to be constantly learning. The soft skills are the emotional intelligence of, understand. I mean, you're Japanese, you work in a certain way. You need to be aware of the Americans are going to work in a different way to how the Japanese work, how, myself being based in London is going to work differently to how maybe working with someone from Germany is different to working with someone from Italian. Now, from Italy. Those are soft skills that need to be learned. So yeah, the other thing I would say is if you're based in Japan, but if you're looking to maybe work abroad, learn about the countries that you might want to go and move to. And the reason I mention this is I studied history as my undergraduate degree, but when I first started traveling to Japan or Brazil, I made an effort to learn about the country and the politics and the food and the history of because I felt it was important if I was in a meeting in Tokyo and I was chatting to Japanese people and getting to know them, I wanted to know about the history of Japan, because I find that fascinating. And, so yeah.
For sure. Thanks for the question. Yeah. I'm just noticing here that it's a suspicious bottle. It's not vodka, it's water, right?
Yeah.
This is before lunch for us. So
yeah, it's a Friday.
Yes, Jamie, we're almost hitting the hour mark.
Sure.
So there's a few other things that I would like to ask. If there's someone watching that has a last question to send, this is the time. Otherwise, it would be maybe a bit too late for it. But if you look back at your career, do you have like favorites or what you would say greatest achievements in your career?
I would say that the greatest achievement was when I got the opportunity to work at the IOC because, it was the opportunity to move to another country.
How old were you?
To be honest, I was a bit older than a lot of people probably expect. I was 37, and that's one thing I would always say to people listening is, I was 27 when I finished my master's. I had a sort of career before. And it's interesting because I have a lot of people come to me and say, oh, I'm 30 and I'm really worried that I'm behind in my career. And I say, look, be patient, because, you live to, you've got a career until you're 60, 65 years old. So, I was 37 when I moved over here I say it was a great achievement because of what I was then able to experience. You know, it was to meet people from different countries, you know, different cultures. I had the opportunity to travel. I had the opportunity to build a network of contacts, both professionally and personally, globally, and who have all become friends. And you know, that to me is certainly something that I'm quite proud of. You know,
That's a great place to be. As
exactly.
well.
Yeah.
Two short ones. Well, you can expand as much as you want, but. Sporty moments. What's your favorite sporty moment? Being Scottish is difficult.
Well, yeah, thank you. Well, we can't say anything about football, you know. We don't have any big moments, apart from we were 1-0 up against Brazil in 1982 when David Neary scored the top corner, but then we upset the Brazilians and they came back and beat us 4-1. Yeah. No, I mean, obviously, being Scottish, I think my favourite moment was when Andy Murray won his first Wimbledon.
Right.
And just how emotional he got, because, you know, a big achievement for a Scottish tennis player. Or sorry, I'm saying Scottish, he's from the UK, but, you know, he's a very passionate Scotsman. And that moment, I remember getting quite emotional watching it with my fiancée back in Edinburgh, you know. And then I had the chance to watch him in Rio win the gold medal against against Del Potro. Yeah. It was 5 hours, I think. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, look, there's lots of moments.
It almost made me lose the Usain Bolt's race.
I know. Well, I didn't go. It was the same day. Yeah. But that was a different venue.
I know. Yeah. It was
but yeah, and it was really windy that night as well, wasn't it? Yeah.
I think definitely. Yeah. Anyway, I went to probably 3 events that day.
Yeah.
And it was a big traffic to.
That's right.
To the stadium.
Yeah.
Last one. One thing I always ask here is for people to recommend a book.
A book.
Or a podcast or both.
Yeah.
Just before, think about it, because there's a few more comments coming in. Let me see. So Hiroki Watanabe really liked her answer. My friend or Marcelo Orquiz or Orquiz is saying nice to see you both. Cheers from Neuchâtel, Lausanne. Thank you, Marcelo.
The last time I saw Marcelo was at a concert in the Jazz Festival. It was and I believe he met my fiancée at a concert, the AHA concert.
Oh yeah,
this summer that I couldn't make. Right. So, but good, nice to hear from you.
And there is here Mohammed Radwan as well has a question.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the Super League before. Do you think that a Super League would actually change football to a better or worse state?
Yeah, do you know, look, this is a fantastic question, and yeah, look, let me give you a little bit of context. I remember when I was doing my masters, right? It was Silvio Berlusconi had the first idea about doing a Super League 20 years ago, and there's a chapter in a book called Great Balls of Fire that's very dystopian. The last chapter talks about football in the future, and this is 20 years ago it was published, and it's basically McDonald's, AC Milan versus Nike, Man United. Right. And it was behind closed doors, purely for television. And I remember reading that when I was studying, going, God, this is going to be a horrible thing that happens. Now, do I want a Super League to happen? I'm not quite sure yet, because look, I'm a great believer in sport is business, football clubs are business, but they also have an obligation to society, you know. So I'm a Hearts fan in Edinburgh. Now, yes, I would love Hearts to develop where we can compete in Europe, but at the moment we can't. You know, we're getting beaten by Fiorentina 4-0 after 35 minutes in the Conference League. It's embarrassing. But there's also the element of Hearts being at the community, you know, the centre of community in Edinburgh. So what is that balance? Now, if a Super League happens, are we going to potentially lose that? However, if I'm running Celtic or Man United and I'm saying to myself, we could grow this business even bigger and earn more money, because we know if we play in a Super League, we're going to create more fans in Thailand or in Asia. Look, my answer is I don't know yet, and because and what I've tried to do is give two scenarios of where sport should be and what sport means. So I apologize for being vague. I would love to maybe come back and talk about super leagues and where they're going, but I mean, it's a huge, broad topic. But what was interesting was the reaction you saw of fans in the UK.
Yeah.
Now, those are true football fans that were saying, look, this is what our club means to us. So, but anyway.
Definitely. So, Mohammed, that wasn't a conclusive answer there, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for the question. There's a comment here from someone you might know. It's Cormac Makui. Great conversation. Jamie has been a super addition to our team.
Thank you, Cormac.
Great addition to my interview roster as well.
I need to pay Cormac for that comment when I see him in London next week.
Yeah. Well,
he's a great member of my team. So yeah.
Thanks for watching. Now I think the last one that I had prepared here for you was to recommend that book or a podcast or YouTube channel.
Can I do two?
You can do three if you want to.
Right, podcast. There's a fantastic podcast called Unofficial Partner, which is run by someone called Richard Gillis and Sean Singleton. So I highly recommend. They publish every week, variety of topics. But if you're in the sports industry or interested, you've got to listen to that every week.
I don't know Richard actually in person. I don't think we've met before, but he's in my list. I want to invite him to.
Right. Well, if you want
an
introduction, we can talk about that.
Definitely. Yeah.
The book, and this sort of goes back to
one podcast. That's one. We're going to say two.
There's another very good podcast called Are You Not Entertained?
Right.
Which is hosted by three people. One of them is a Scottish guy called Roger Mitchell, who was the CEO of the Scottish Premier League 20 years ago. And so he has some very interesting views around the commercialization of sport. So I would highly recommend listening to that one. Another one is the Fluid Fan podcast. Angela Ruggiero, based in the USA, former Olympian, very smart individual. I think studied at Harvard. Some great guests on that. But I mean, to be honest, I could probably spend an hour talking about lots of different podcasts.
So let's go to the book.
Go to a book, right? Going back to what I said earlier about that shift from stakeholder capitalism to shareholder capitalism. Mark Carney, who was the former governor of the Bank of England and who some believe might become the Prime Minister of Canada at some point, he wrote a book during COVID called Values, How to Build a Better World, which is actually it starts off about economics and monetary policy, but it actually then moves into how businesses, yes, they exist to make money, which is, we can't apologize for that. However, they also should exist to do well for society, address climate change, make sure that the world is addressing inequalities, etc. So, the big alignment with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So I would highly recommend reading that because I do believe there's a lot of what I learned in that book that can be taken into the future of sports sponsorships.
Very good.
Cool.
Very good. Thank you so much. Jamie.
I've really enjoyed that.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Let's go and grab some lunch.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe a beer.
Maybe a beer.
Cormac, don't tell anyone that.
And now I want to thank everybody who participated. Thanks for making this interactive, even more interesting. And I hope to see you soon. I'm not sure if we'll be back next week, but I'll keep you updated. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Ciao.
Cheers.
Good. There we go.